Happy Thursday. How are y'all? Let me know if you can hear me. All right, I just realized I forgot. I wasn't going to drink wine today, to be honest. I was going to get water because it's so freaking hot. Let me know in the comment. Can you guys hear me? I'm not seeing anything. Okay, well, we're going to start. And then if you can't hear me, just let me know. Okay, cool. So today, hi, Tiffany. Today, we are going to do something a little bit different, which is on Patreon. You guys know I started my new series, Colonizer Exposed. So we did Belgium 2 weeks ago. We are going to do, okay, it's just running late. Thank you, Violet. We are going to do US on Sunday on July 4th, because that is my present to America, to let them know the correct history. And yeah, so today I figured we'd do like a little truncated version. The videos on Patreon are much more detailed, I would say. This is going to focus on one specific issue, which is the residential school system in Canada. And yeah, so good. I'm glad you guys can hear me. Thank you, Roxanne. Great. Wonderful. So in full transparency, I did promise you, some of y'all, a few things. So to be honest, we're still going to do the Jay-Z Damon Dash update because the pettiness is just, it's quite comical. So we're going to do that. Hey, New Nubian. And then a few of you asked for Smile Direct. So like maybe we'll do, remember how we used to do the Wine and Lawsuits Wednesdays where we did a couple of them at once? I think maybe I'll do it like that since they're like smaller updates. And then yeah, so we are going to test this out. Full disclaimer, I'll tell you before the trigger warnings happen in the video. Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and get started. Also, yes, I'm still in the process of moving, so this will probably change. I couldn't like figure it out in time beforehand because as usual, I'm running late. All right, cool. So our agenda is going to be the history of the Canadian residential school system. Specifically, since some people want to act like this is in the very, very far past, which is not, reminding people that it is that the last one was 1996. Oh, I love that, David. Hey, community. That's the best. That is the best. Then we are going to talk about What-ABOOT-Ism. And I have a specific example about this and the blame game. Then we're going to talk about Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the No More Storland Sisters movement, and specifically what that's about. And then not a sip, but a discussion. So yes. All right. Let's get into it. Okay. So also, I finally found the font at the right size. I'm like, oh, wow, I can see this. God, y'all know it's always a long week. All right, so the not too long ago history of Canada's residential schools. So if you're not familiar, for those of us not familiar, Canada's residential school system actually began around 1883 under what was coined and is still termed the Indian Act. America has similar legislation, is very tone deaf in nature. And you'd think that they would amend these things, but child, they don't. Anyways, the last residential school in Canada closed in 1996. So this is not that long ago. Also, people today, when I posted it about on my Instagram, reached out to me and did mention that they were very happy that people are talking about it and there's more visibility. However, it is traumatizing as they do have family members that unfortunately were sent to residential schools. So this is a current lived experience of many people in Canada and the US, but we're focusing on Canada today. Okay, so it's often tied to the moniker, which the evilness of people never ceases to amaze me. Whenever I have to do research for these things, so like on the Colonizer Exposed series, it's very, you're not surprised, but then you're surprised. You're like, why? Why go out of your way to do these things? But that's what, colonizers do. So the moniker was kill the Indian in the child, or often referred to as kill the Indian, save the child, which they wanted to force assimilation on these children. So what they did starting in 1883 is they forcibly removed these children from their homes to then, they then cut their hair. They didn't allow them to speak their native languages. They wanted to indoctrinate them into European Christianity and that whole societal structure, as colonization and most colonizer theories are very, I would say, almost complete opposite to most Indigenous cultures. If you learn anything about that, similar things have been done around the world which is completely disgusting. So these were church-run schools, and they house and abuse more than 150,000 First Nation Indigenous children. In Canada, they call their Indigenous population First Nation. I think that's a very beautiful designation versus here in the US, child, we have yet to figure that out because America is a mess, as I say all the time. All right, so since May of 2021, over 1,000, this is this year, unmarked graves of First Nation Indigenous children have been found on the site of these schools. So the total death is thought to be around 15,000 children, which to keep in mind, like these are children sometimes as young as 6 years old. So these are young children that people disregarded, but also, which is the belief, and we are going to get into a specific clip that I found on TikTok, purposely harm these children. So I apologize for bringing the rain to your Thursday, but I do think that it's necessary that we talk about these. So let's see if this video is working. If not, I'll go ahead and pull it up. Okay,
Warning.
Cool. So this is from that Navajo guy 79. Highly recommend his TikTok. For Indigenous History Month, he went through all the days and then gave different history lessons about the day. So I think it's a great learning. Also, particularly when doing research, what I've found like very interesting is it's so much easier to find articles, videos, things of that nature from the non-lived experience from like an academic person, which on one hand, information is great. It's good for everybody to know. However, you need to hear the lived experience from an actual person that has actually lived this, that actually has that lived experience. Similar to when we were talking about Juneteenth, it took me a hot second to find an article from someone from Texas, which it shouldn't be that way. So trigger warning to this, to what he's about to say. It is very sad, to be very honest, but it is something that needs to be said.
Today's Indigenous history video could make you very angry. It's day 10. Food historian Ian Mosby found out they were doing experiments on Indigenous children between 1942 and 1952 at 6 residential schools. Indigenous children were intentionally malnourished and denied adequate nutrition. One group was given a combination of these supplements to see if it helped. It didn't. A flour mix of these ones only made them even more anemic. Believe it or not, there's more. 2 extremely horrifying facts. The basics of how to alleviate malnutrition was already known before these experiments began. So what was the point of doing them? Even after the recommendations of the Nuremberg trial, the Department of Indian Affairs of Canada knew, but they allowed these experiments to go on anyway. It's chilling to think about what else may have happened that we don't know about. Thank you for listening to my words. Warning, today's Indigenous...
So on that point, I will go ahead and leave his TikTok because I think if you are on TikTok, you should give him a follow. I go on TikTok for research, but don't actively go on it. But yes, it's complete wickedness. It's complete wickedness. And I think that the more we talk about it and the more we normalize the acknowledgement and calling it what it is the first step. But also recompense needs to happen, and recompense is in the eye of the victim. So I think that's important. I really don't care for Trudeau and everybody else's crocodile tears, in my opinion. But we are going to get into that. And let me just put this, because I know it might be a little bit small on your screen. So I'm going to put his handle, and then some of the research, I've already put it, I linked it, but those were like the main publications. So I'm going to put some of the Indigenous foundations that I saw as well. I'll link those afterwards. So again, today might be a little bit more somber than we're used to, but that's okay. It can't be sunshine and rainbows every day. At the Native Guy 79. Okay, hold on one second. Let me just type this out for y'all. Okay. All right, so let's go to that. All right, so then to the next part.
Today's Indigenous...
Let me go. All right, so for context, for a lot of people, because if you want to see a spicy place, and I don't post often on Instagram, but I do There's usually a story every other day on there. If you want to see a spicy place of me just randomly airing out trolls, randomly letting people realize that I am not the one or the two, feel free to hop on my Instagram. I posted about this, and I've been posting about this on my Instagram a few times. And this Canadian woman, which we're going to get into her message, decided to take offense. Child, she didn't want to hear the truth about her country, which I find very interesting. And in doing so, I think it's important to note that a lot of people now are claiming, oh, we didn't know. Willful ignorance is simply willful. That doesn't mean that as a country didn't know. And specifically, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee was formed and issued an entire report in 2015. This is not new. People caring because they're getting found out is new. This entire issue is not new. And to say, oh, I didn't know, is a very huge slap in the face to the Indigenous population of a country that you have colonized. So just going to put that out there, and we're going to get into this apology. All right. So this is from The Guardian yesterday. So this is about Trudeau. He issued a very tearful 2017 apology to survivors. However, in the reconciliation, the Truth and Reconciliation, in their report, they asked for 94 recommendations. As of June 30, 2029, woo, the future, 2021, only nine of those recommendations have been considered. So when people are still upset and people are still saying, like, we don't care, the proof is in the lack of action. Apologizing. Okay. Actions speak louder than words, as most people know. So also, I think it's important to note the government of Canada for 14 years, this is the largest lawsuit in Canadian history, I believe it was 36 or 38,000 former pupils of residential schools sued the Canadian government. And for 14 years, the Canadian government nickeled and dimed and battled them in court because they didn't want to acknowledge it and they didn't want to pay for it. So this whole, oh, as a nation, we're grieving. No, correction. As a nation, you are heeding correction. And the First Nations have been arguing with you for 14 years to recognize this and to at least start rectifying the situation. So I think that that's important to call out. And of course, you know what? And I will be very honest, and I'm the first to say the Western education system, particularly in America, loves to hide things. Okay, fine. However, and we're going to get to this at the end, it is not news to anyone how Indigenous people in Canada are treated. We're going to get to the current movements that are going on, because this is not something that anyone can say, oh, I didn't know, like, people are being treated bad. No More Stolen Sisters has been going on, I believe, since 2004, which is a movement to protect Indigenous women, as they are the largest victims of violence in Canada. And it often goes unreported. Over 6,000 women have been missing. So I think that's important when people want to say, oh, I didn't know. Well, if you want to be willful, I don't understand like why you think someone should have pity for your ignorance. So Nozuko said, willful ignorance and saying things are in the past are tactics of everyone who doesn't want there to be material actions of redress to happen. It's cheaper and less awkward for them. And that's correct. When systems of colonization and white supremacy are called out, people belonging to those demographics may often feel uncomfortable. It shouldn't make anybody comfortable. Like, it's not a comfortable situation. How do you think Indigenous people feel having lived through it? There's nothing to feel comfortable about. It's okay to feel discomfort. If this is the one discomfort in your life that all of a sudden the world is realizing that Canada is not about maple leaves and syrups all day, that's okay, boo. You will survive. Exactly. And to Chelsea's point, the way First Nations people are ignored in both Canada and the US is so shameful. It's very shameful. And we're going to get into that as well. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Now, what I find interesting in the blame game, child, it became Trudeau versus the Pope. So when interviewed, Trudeau for about a week, about like the past 2-ish weeks, was like, yes, we are so sad. We're so sorry. We are heartbroken. We are ashamed. Ashamed was the word. Again, you should be ashamed that the government for 14 years fought with these people in court to not pay them. Why would that court case take 14 years? Why? It could have and dragged all of those 36,000 victims through the mud for 14 years when you could have simply just admitted that you were wrong. And by you, I mean the Canadian government. Y'all knew that you put these children in these places. I'm just very confused. So Trudeau then apparently has asked access to the church records. So a lot of these schools were run by the Catholic Church, the Lutheran Church, the Presbyterian Church, everybody's church. Every Christian church has run these schools, a large portion of them being Catholic churches. To note, the Lutheran, the Presbyterian, and I'm forgetting the other name, the denominations, the only difference is how they sing, how high their hands go up. That's literally the only differences in these denominations. The rest of them apologize. The Catholic Church and the Pope specifically refused to apologize. So from the BBC clipping that I have here, Trudeau asks for access to church records to help account for more than 4,100 pupils believed to have died from disease or malnutrition, he said, adding that they're still seeing resistance from the church. So when asked if the government, so the Canadian government, was considering taking legal action to gain access to the records, Mr. Trudeau said, "I think if it's necessary, we will take stronger measures." But he added, before we have to start taking the Catholic Church to court, I'm very hopeful that religious leaders will understand that this is something they need to participate in. So what you're saying is, oh, thank you so much, Mad Fire Entertainment. I appreciate you. So what you're saying is you had no issue, the Canadian government, to argue and to drag Indigenous people through the court system for 14 years. But you don't want to press the Catholic Church. You are hoping the goodness of Jesus Christ himself will make the Catholic Church give up court documents. Again. Oh, to Sapphire Princess, why are you using past tense? They're still fighting in court. They settled with the day students, but they're still fighting residential students. Yes, this is correct. So this is a good correction. The day students won. Not fun fact. The Catholic Church owes them $25 million, which they refuse to pay. So yes, they are currently to this day, thank you, Sapphire Princess, for that, still fighting the night students because some of these students, like similar to a boarding school, were not allowed to go home at all. So, and I'm going to... All right. And then I have here, so the Pope, in his refusal to apologize, has decided, okay, well, you know what? I'm not really going to apologize. This is very regrettable that all this happened. However, I'm happy for a delegation of First Nation leaders to come to the Vatican. He said, well, I can't come to Canada, boo, but you could come over here in December. He's too busy at this present time to speak on this with them. It's not important to him right now. So how the murder of estimated 15,000 children is not important enough to have a conversation and meet people where they are, and then to allegedly blame the pandemic. You know what? Sometimes I just don't have words. It is extremely gaslit in the families of descendants that don't know they are genetically Indigenous. That's actually a very good point as well. That's a very good point. So there were certain people that reached out to me that they know that they're Indigenous, but that's a good point because the whole purpose of this program, it's literally a program, was to force assimilation on these children. To force them to forget their roots, to force them that, oh, hey, I have a culture, I have a way of life, I have this thing, was to tell them, no, the European colonizer way is the only way, and this is what you're going to do. Oh, thank you, lead attorney. I appreciate you. All right. So let's go on. Okay, so we are going to get into, I tried to add like one little funny in here, child, to a very like, there's nothing, very little wit to add to any of this. About What-ABOOT-Ism. So What-ABOOT-Ism and the blame game. So when I posted this on Instagram, we're going to get, thank you, Blood Honey, we're going to get to the Truth and Commission, which they deem this a cultural genocide. So when we get to that slide, we're going to talk about that. So when I put this on Instagram, people don't like to accept the truth, particularly when the truth has to do with something that, they don't want to acknowledge and they feel like is an attack on their country, their nation, their, colonized piece of land. So, I said, end quote. I'm not surprised that Trudeau, a man who has admittedly, and we've seen pictures, worn black and brown face, that he cares more about, which we're going to get to it, the church is burning, than about the children, in my opinion. If you cared about the children, you would force the Catholic Church to cooperate with this investigation. If you cared about the children, to Sapphire Princess's point, you would still not be in court. To me, you don't care. To which, this silly Sally decided to tell me, I enjoy your content, but as a Canadian, and yes, I've cut out her name here because, I'm trying to be kind. You have to learn about our culture, which, mind you, my criticism was that the man was wearing blackface and brownface, and so I'm not surprised. So unless I am mistaken, blackface and brownface is not Canadian culture. I know plenty of Canadians, and it's not appropriate. But hey, what do I know? What do I know? Your commentary in your post sounds like Fox News headline. Wow. Or Tucker Carlson-esque. Fox News and Tucker Carlson like to lie. Again, shall I pull up the picture of your prime minister in brown face? Okay, let's continue. This is a tragic situation, something many of us knew about. Willful ignorance is not anybody else's problem but yours. We are reeling and devastated by these findings, with probably more to come. The USA is now looking to Canada because of our Indigenous inquiries. Yes, from 2015 that you have ignored. Yes. And it's estimated the USA has 2 to 3 times more Indigenous child deaths than Canada. Your country is not innocent either. Iribu, Bubu the Fool, Brejin, Sistren, let me help you. I am not American. First of all. Second of all, if you actually watch my channel, you would know that. Third of all, the What-ABOOT-Ism, Brejin, Sistren, idiot. If you were to murder somebody and the popo showed up at your door and said, ma'am, you have killed somebody, and you said, oh, I killed 1 person, but Stephanie killed 5. Iribu, we're both going to prison, to the slammer, to the chokey, because both of us are murderers. Just because you killed 1 person and I killed 5 does not make you any better. When people cannot accept the reality of life, they're like, oh, well, I did a bad thing, but look what so-and-so did. All of Huna is awful. I hate to break it to you. There is no good colonizer. Colonization is evil. When we get to Colonizer Exposed France on Patreon, France has a very interesting way of talking about their colonization in that, oh, we did it the nice way. You see what the English did? We didn't do that. We took people in. This is a lie. This is nonsense. There is nothing nice about owning people. There is nothing nice about thieving people's land. There is nothing nice about stealing children's culture, cutting their hair, malnutrition, starving children, as the man said. As the man said, purposefully starving children. There is nothing nice about that. There is nothing to say, oh, well, at least I'm not over there. That is not accountability. That is delusion and nonsense and foolery. And that does not help anybody, especially not you, because you look like Boo Boo the Fool. And what I found very funny, because what I'm not going to do is sit there and respond to people and get in DM arguments. You want attention, honey? I will give you attention. That's what we're about to do. That's what's always on my channel. So clearly you're not aware that as a lawyer, I love screenshots. But hey, it's a learning lesson for everyone, since, as you said, you were not aware. Many of you in Canada were willfully ignorant. Well, welcome to reality of life. And to Roxanne, what-aboutism and trying to escape accountability is big colonizer energy. Exactly. Big colonizer energy. When you do something wrong, or the country you live in does something wrong and you feel shame about it, it is fine to say, hey, I feel ashamed. You know what? I noticed many years ago, they don't treat so-and-so and so nice. Okay, well, how do I act in my day-to-day life? Okay, cool. I'm so sorry, Aurora. If you don't mind me reading this, let me know actually before I read it, and then I'll go ahead and read it. I want to make sure that that's okay with you. So to Nozuko's point, France is still eating from Africa till this day. When we get into France, France is one of the #1. So originally on the Patreon, the reason why Canada was never included, I tried to include the biggest offenders, not the biggest offenders, the offenders with, to be honest, that have impacted the most people, which were Britain, Belgium, because Belgium has gotten away with an entire Congolese genocide, the largest genocide in history that most people do not know about. Okay. America, because yes, America's a colonizer. Just because America is not that old does not mean anything. Spain, child. To this day, we cannot have a productive conversation about the difference between nationality, ethnicity, and race because of Spain. And last but not least, France. So that's what we're going to talk about. That's fine, Aurora. Okay, thank you. I'm going to read this from Aurora. I'm of the families that are finding out they are indigenous. We are talking mass genocide, rape, assimilation, taking children, and forced to residential cuts on land, native hunting as sport. I'm going to leave this up here so people realize that, because people seem to think like, oh, well, this happened, like, oh, I was not involved. The last, again, we have to do basic math, coming from someone who hates math. If I can do basic math, we can all do basic math. The last residential school ended in 1996. The people, these children did not starve themselves. These children did not remove themselves from their house. The people that did this are likely alive and elderly, or their children are definitely alive. So this whole, oh, well, I need the church to give me the records. Y'all don't know who worked up the street for all these years? You don't know? Everybody has amnesia. We have to protect the privacy of people. The privacy of what? Of murderers? There are children every day being found in unmarked grave. Didn't even have the decency. Some of these children, 3 feet, as in they're not that deep in the ground. And not to be morbid and not to be gross. But that's not something that you're not going to smell, that you're not going to see. But, oh, the privacy of these people that work there. Screw these people. I would say, technically, I would count Spain as number 2, because OG Elizabeth in England is technically the largest in terms of mass size, as in the saying always goes, the sun never set on the, what they used to call the English Empire? I think they used to call it the Empire. I don't know. They're English colonies. She used to have, not she specifically, but the royal family used to have a saying that was like that. So technically, they are like that. All right. Okay, so let's go. Oh, child, can we do a survey of all the black box people? It's a year later. What has happened? What have you done with your black box posting? I want to know. I would like to know what has happened. Has the black box posting on Instagram stopped people from harassing their coworkers? Has it stopped people from calling the police? And again, right now is not about black people, but again, like the symbolism of it all. The symbolism of it all. Ciao. Not the British flag. I feel aggressed. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's go. Okay, so let's go to the next one. I think my internet's lagging, so let me know. All right, so Canada, aka Babylon is burning. Babylon is burning, and to be honest, like, okay. So since this has come out, there have been about 4 church fires, and people might be mad. There is a quote by MLK, what is a riot is the language of the unheard. And while this is not a riot, I would say a burning too. Listen. Trudeau is now telling people, oh, this is awful. Why I specifically clipped this clip from the Toronto Star, because I am flabbergasted that this man fixed his lips to say this. Okay, so I'm going to read. This is about 30 minutes outside of Edmonton. This is in Morinville, Alberta. So the residents watching the early morning hours as century old. They have to let you know it's 100 years old, child. Roman Catholic Church's steeple and roof collapsed, surrounded by flames. And what Alberta Premier Jason Kennedy labeled a potential hate crime. Sir, was it a hate crime when the church stole the children? Was it a hate crime when the church, according to other people and according to hand accounts, starved the children? Was it a hate crime when the children were murdered? Was it a hate crime? Is it a hate crime now how Indigenous people are treated? Which, yes, now is finally a hate crime. I'm confused. Here go blood honey. An old Indian joke. Why did the sun never set on the British Empire? Because you can't trust a British in the dark. I'm done. At least we got one joke out of this. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Because child, oh, I'm tired. Oh, this is crazy. And you know what's so sad? And it's just sad. It's not funny. At first, I was like, oh, the reason why we have Patreon and the reason why I told you guys when we started the Patreon series, I was like, oh, very interested in doing Colonizer Exposed series. As a colonized person, it means a lot to me. Also, I really, as someone that likes history, do not like the complete revisionist history that has gone on in a lot of these countries. And Robert's suggestion, who's like one of my favorite subscribers, was like, oh, maybe do Patreon, because it was immediately like, what kind of Veritol are we going to get, like, as a community, if I go up on here and I'm like, wow, look at the colonizer. And just people can't handle it sometimes. They just can't handle the truth of the matter. If you cannot handle the truth of the matter and you feel like your face is getting flushed, just turn it off. Turn it off. Go reflect on why you have those feelings. Reflect. Listen, the US government, the Canadian government, all of these colonizers' government care more about buildings than people. Who cares about that building? I hate to say it. Sorry to it. Like, ooh, the 100-year-old, perfectly architectured Gothic steeple. And is the steeple alive? Am I missing something? Did the steeple have a family? Was the steeple actually a door that you forced to be a steeple? Child, miss me with the foolishness. I'm just so tired of it. I'm just so tired of it. All right. So, and of course, which I find funny because all I do is push at America every other business day. I find it funny when people want to be like, well, America's not better. Okay, and America is also a bully. So just because think you're better, like, you're still a bully, like, what is, it's a low bar. It's a low bar. Speaking about that woman on Instagram. Okay, M. Clement, I feel like American education implies that Indigenous Americans were few in number and were pushed towards the West Coast. These events are making them conform the numbers. That's very true. Confront the numbers. That's very true. That's very true. And also because the way it was taught in American school systems, just to highlight for the 50 millionth time how these school systems are just trifling, child, is that some of these indigenous tribes are actually native to where they live. No, they're not. You push them from the lush land they lived on for thousands of years without causing environmental harm. We can do a whole colonizer exposed. Colonization and white supremacy is at fault for the reason we have climate change. Indigenous people minding their business did not cause all of these issues. But hey, capitalism is ruining the world, but can't say that. Yes, Tina, I was reading that too. And I'm trigger warning for this. I'll pin it on the screen, but I won't read that out loud. But listen. My poor Miami is completely sinking. America cares about money. All right, so we're going to get to the next part, which is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, just for anybody that is like, all of a sudden, this is happening. Canada has realized we just, no, stop it. Again, this is kicked off because 36 or 38, I'm getting the number wrong, it's either or, victims and adults that were forced to go to these residential schools sued Canada 14 years ago, and therefore forced Canada to finally have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I would like you to read this from their now defunct website. Thank you for visiting trc.ca. The first stage of the journey of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada is now complete. As of December 18th, 2015, the TRC offices are now closed. Closed, not open. It then became and before people were like, well, Stephanie, it became the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. Okay, so you closed the one office because you filed one report. Everyone's like, oh, we're done with this. We're done. We did it. And the Canadian government was like, see, we filed a report. We have a report. We have documentation. Look at the documentation. The documentation said 94 things they must do. And again, what did Toronto Star say? 9 out of 94. Y'all know I'm really bad with math. I'm pretty sure. What is that, like 10%? Less than 10? A little more than 10? Somewhere around 10? But hey. Here we are, People are just learning about this. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And you know what? If you truly were blind to all of this your whole life, okay, fine. Fine. You can read a book. There are lots of courses on this now. I would highly recommend you follow that TikTok of the Indigenous man that I left there, that native guy 79. And then I'm going to leave some other resources as well. Okay. But don't be loud and wrong. Don't be loud and wrong, because just because you just now realize the problem doesn't mean the problem hasn't been wreaking havoc and ruining lives all these years. That's all I'm saying. All right, so Sapphire Princess. The problem is that Canada has always been proud to define itself as better than the U.S. I think so, if you saw it again. And now the truth is out that they are not. Racism with your pinky up is still racism. Yes, thank you, sister. Thank you, sister. Thank you. There is no good colonizer. I don't know how many times to tell you this. If you colonize a country, it's evil. Colonization is evil. Forcing assimilation on people is evil. There is no, I was a nice enslaver. No, there's no nice nothing. No. I hate to break it to you. Don't want to sound ridiculous, but it's not. That's just not how this works. All right. Exactly. I have not, type effectiveness, read The Color of Money, but I will put that on my list. I actually have like a long-standing list. Exactly. Like, let's call a spade a spade. And this is why things like critical race theory, which, let us be very clear, again, because I said this already, in the US has never been taught to mainstream anything. Never in K through 12, never really in college, unless you sign up for certain courses. It is a graduate program designed by lawyers. Critical race theory could definitely be applied here and used to how the heck have these issues persisted until today. So yes, it can be helpful, but people don't want to upset their status quo. I have no idea why people want to put themselves on a pedestal. I have no idea. You cannot. If you colonize a country, there's nothing to put on a pedestal. Nothing in the least. All right. So on that note, so there was one more thing I wanted to talk about, which I just realized the slide is not in here. So, okay, my bad. So I'll just pull up the agenda, which is the No More Stolen Sisters campaign. So for those of you, which this, to be honest, has not gotten enough media attention, at least speaking for the US, as it should have, because this is encompassing the US and Canada as well. And to be very clear, the US also has residential schools, which just as trifling. Everybody is trifling. Everyone is trifling. There's equal blame to go around, but right now, Canada, it's you, boo. It's you. Sorry about you. It's you. So No More Stolen Sisters began in about 2004, I believe, where basically in Canada, specifically Amnesty International started looking into it, where Indigenous women are much more likely to go missing, be victims of violence, have actually been found murdered. Since 2004, they're estimating about 6,000 Indigenous women have been murdered, unaccounted for, unsolved murders. And so No More Stolen Sisters seeks to eradicate that issue, but also bring awareness to this issue. To the point I believe Chelsea made earlier, which is that in the US and in Canada, I would say in the US, maybe worse, I would say, than Canada, since people want to be like, who's worse? All y'all awful, but whatever. The erasure of Indigenous people, which this idea, and someone else said this, M. Clement said this as well, the idea that this is a small population of people. It never was a small population of people. No, it's never was. There's a large amount of people, and by othering people and thinking like, oh, it's not that many people, this is not a big deal. It is a big deal. It is a big deal, and it is a problem, and there are issues that are persisting till today. So the only way these things are going to be solved is if people that are not Indigenous, like if the white Canadians decides to cause a fuss and to say something and to be like, wow, I didn't realize my aunt, my cousin, my neighbor worked at that school and is a trifling mofo, and start turning these people in and start saying something. That's the truth of the matter, because again, for 14 years already, Indigenous First Nation people of Canada have been fighting with the Canadian government. And the Canadian government has been like, oh, it's fine, oh, it's okay. In 2017, finally apologized. What is that? Okay, apology. What about the other, whatever 94 minus 9 is? What is that, 83? What about the other 83 things that they ask you to do? Are you going to do them? It's only going to happen if other people start saying something. So, I'm not, to be honest, I'm not sure about, I was very confused how that man got reelected. And maybe that's my sheer hope / ignorance of certain people's will to forgive white men. I thought, they're showing all these pictures. This man is saying, like, let me be honest with you. That's not the only picture of me, dressing up in brown face, blackface. When people just were like, oh, it's fine. He was young. And I'm like, this is a grown man. What are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? So that was, after that, I mentally kind of wrote Canada off. I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. Thank you, Kareen. Yeah, this is disgusting. And I'm so upset. She's from New Mexico. Our, oh gosh, Secretary of the Interior. I can't remember her name right now, but she is Indigenous. Hold on, I'm looking her up. Of the Interior here in the U.S. She's launching a full investigation in the U.S. Deb Haaland, I believe is how you say her name. So she is launching a full investigation to the U.S. as she has been personally impacted by this. And I do not quote me, I don't remember if it was her or a family member actually was forced to go to these residential schools in the U.S. as well. So I'm very glad that somebody is of Indigenous background, one of the few Indigenous women in our freaking political system here in the US, and being allowed to finally, hopefully, get some Deb Haaland, get some recompense for these people, because this is trifling. This is trifling, yes. And I'm so annoyed because I thought the slide loaded and I don't know what I did with it, but I had a really nice picture of her, but that's okay. But yeah, so this is nothing but lying and nonsense. Like, I don't believe any of this. I don't believe that they don't have the records. I don't believe any of this. Like, how do they not have the records when they have all of the firsthand accounts of 36,000 victims? 36,000 victims. That is more people than some of these towns in Canada. It's willful ignorance. If they wanted to prosecute these people, they would have been prosecuted these people. And that's that. All right. Their crest. Thank you, Tina. This is a great point, because there's still current active discrimination going on. So to Tina's point, the only way to make this better is to action the requests of the Indigenous peoples. Majority, if not all, reservations have no clean drinking water and have been drinking bottled water for decades, which also leads to, plastic in the water, leads to all these issues where, like, in certain countries, I believe, where is it? In like some of the developing countries, child, that word annoys me. And I said it, oh well. In some of the countries in Africa, they usually are drinking bottled water as well. And who gets paid off of this? Mostly American corporations. They're like, oh, well, Americans don't want to drink bottled water, so we're just going to ship it over there. It's trifling. And then to Roxanne's point about Trudeau, I found that people are more likely to ignore classy, nice, or charismatic racists, while also yelling about people like Trump who don't hide what they are. And that's what it is. That's what it is. And again, back to the point of, you can't be a nice colonizer. You can't be a nice racist either. Hate to break it to you. A racist is a racist. But that's the point. People will rationalize in their head, like, oh, well, we're polite. Like, I have black friends. See? Insert friend. Child. Ain't nothing but a mess. Ain't nothing but a mess. Exactly. Agreed. And that's why many of these reservations were hit so hard by the infection as well. Yes. Completely agreed. Okay. Well, I'll put out the call, and we can maybe do like 1 or 2 calls since it's still a little early. But yeah. Also, since I moved, y'all, we got this standing AC. This has nothing to do with this. And it does not work. So I'm sitting here with no AC. It's hot in here. But yeah, that's fine. Hopefully by the next video, I will have everything situated. And then, yeah, so we are going to cover things that I owe all of you. Oh, student loan update will come up as well. That'll probably come up tomorrow. And then we're going to do Colonizer Exposed USA. So that will be on Patreon. I'm thinking about putting it on YouTube. We'll see. And it'll definitely be on Patreon, though. And on Patreon, for less than a glass of wine, you can help support me. And we can do like more things like this, which I'm very much interested in. And I think, it's very great. Oh, gosh. All right. Reservations etymology means to hold back. Colonize means to move around. And is tilling the land to reap it for later. Etymology can say a lot. Oh, very interesting. Very, very interesting. All right. All right, y'all. Well, I appreciate all of you. And thank you for tuning in. And this is very, let me pin your comment, Brianna. This is very interesting because the way people have weaponized language is interesting. Also, back to when people say settler colonialism. To settle something means nobody was there. There were people here. There have always been people here. If you are a settler, you are a colonizer. That's it. People just want to dance around the word colonizer. They're like, oh, just so bad. It just makes me itch. It makes me uncomfortable. Well, it should. It's not good. It's not good. It's not a good thing to do. All right, y'all. Well, I appreciate all of you. And discovered. Yeah. Discovered in the context of European colonizers means I, in my ignorance, just realized this was here, which is not actually what the word discovered means. Language is thank you, Brianna. That was a very good point. Language is so important. And it's interesting because language is so often weaponized against marginalized people, particularly Black and brown people. And the more you know, the more you realize wait, the word minority, which is why I don't like that word, which I think it was Blood Honey. I think it was Blood Honey said it, or I don't know if it was Robert. Somebody said that instead they use racialized, which I think is very good. I like that better. Because I'm this minority is factually incorrect. Also makes, would assume smallness out of somebody. So yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question. To be honest, I didn't look into it. I saw it and I was like, oh, mess. Didn't look into that, but we'll see. Y'all know the exactly, which is what I always said. We are the global majority. So this is factually and mathematically incorrect. So what is the reason, Cardi B voice? But yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all. And if you want, you should sign up for my Patreon. We have Discord. We have lives. It's a bashment. It's a let us chat about colonization in a troll-free safe space. Bashment. So, hey. It's good. We're learning together. And I think the next phase of Patreon is I really want to get into one is awareness because a lot of history has been muddled down, whitewashed, we have to talk about it. And the second part is okay, what does global reparations look like? How does it work? How does community organization around this work? How do you sue the various nation states to be hey, run me my check? Nothing is free. So that I think we're going to slowly get into that, which I'm very excited about as well. All right. Well, on that note, I'll let y'all go and I'll get out this hot room and I'll see y'all in the next video. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you. All right. Bye.